School of Management Studies IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 016 International Business Management for MBA program. Presenting Block 1 Introduction to International Business. Unit 1 Dynamics of International Business Part 1.
Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to 1. Trace the origin of international trade. 2. Explain the concept and dynamism of international business. 3. Understand the reasons behind firms going international. And 4. Appreciate the benefits and importance of international business. Introduction. International business as a discipline is of a recent origin. It is hard to imagine a world without international business. Virtually every nation, howsoever small it may be, has firms involved in various types of international business activities. It is through these activities that nations enjoy the benefits of international business by trading in a variety of goods and services produced around the world and made available locally. International business, conventionally called as international trade, has been known to exist ever since man learned to live in an organized manner. India, for instance, is well known for spices. Egyptians had a significant foreign trade. The fundamental basis of international trade lies in the fact that countries are endowed by nature with different resources. These differences arise from geographical, physical, or climatic features. Some countries have a monopoly of certain crops. For example, Bengal in India have high jute production, and Punjab in Pakistan produces best quality of basmati rice. International business is thus inevitable when there are marked differences in the countries regarding material, natural vegetation, climate, soils, and other physical and geographical conditions. It is also affected by several other factors besides natural and geographical factors such as stage of economic development, accumulation of capital by a nation and its foreign investments, technological progress, trade and financial regulations, political affiliations, education and special skills of the population, and so on. Though international business as a discipline, as stated earlier, is of a recent origin, international trade is claimed to be as old as the history of mankind itself. Even at the most tribal level, communities found it in their interest to trade, albeit in a very primitive manner and involving the exchange of simple objects mostly for immediate consumption. Historically, trade was in the form of barter and was undertaken both for social as well as economic reasons. Even though modern trade is conducted in far more advanced forms and for more complex reasons than ever before, the basic human need for trade remains the same. However, unlike ancient times during which trade was devised and undertaken by communities for the benefit of communities themselves, over 90% of modern trade is undertaken by private firms in pursuit of their own aims and objectives. The growth of modern trade coincided to a large extent with the emergence of the modern nations and with the consequent formation of national borders. The clear recognition and appreciation of the mutual benefits of free trade provided sufficient incentives for nation-states to seek greater opportunities in each other's domestic markets and thus to increase the volume of trade among themselves. Such mutual benefits have been largely responsible for the growth of alliances and regional integration around the world, as evidenced by the establishment of a considerable number of trading areas, such as the European Union and the North American Free Trade Agreement. Over the years, nations have been promoting trade and international business by attempting to create suitable business and investment environments within their borders, not only out of political and strategic necessity, but also out of a desire to attract business and foreign investment, often in competition with other nations. For example, the spate of liberalization, deregulation, and privatization programs by governments around the world, in particular by those of the former Soviet republics and Eastern Europe, has given special impetus to the growth of foreign direct investment. Many countries around the world have witnessed substantial growth in the economy in the past 2 decades. There has been faster growth in the international transactions, especially in the form of FDIs. Not only has the total stock of capital grown rapidly, but more significantly, there has been growth in the number of subsidiaries of multinational companies. There has also been growth in the number of countries in which specific firms were active. As both international trade and investment grew rapidly, international competition became more intense and many national industries became global industries. Similarity of markets in different countries and intense global competition drove international competitors to coordinate their marketing and competitive strategies between countries more actively. The relevant scope of strategy thus shifted from discrete national markets to global markets. The coordination of worldwide competitive actions among the various subsidiaries of MNCs became more important. The removal of trade barriers, especially in the last decade of the previous millennium, and the growing similarity of the national markets created the potential for globalization of markets and competition. The development of global networks brought about by MNCs and alliances between independent firms, on the one hand, and the technology of cheap, effective transportation and global communication networks, on the other hand, provided the practical means necessary for the integration of supply. These conditions were necessary, though not sufficient. Intense competition in most industries was the driving force necessary for integration and globalization. Globalization is a process by which a business looks at the world market as a one single market without barriers of social, cultural, economic, political, or commercial factors which separate different country markets. For example, India and USA can be different in terms of economic factors such as the per capita income and purchasing power of the consumers, the stage of economic development, etc. Since these barriers are less effective in a global scenario, it leads to the increased movement of goods and services across boundaries, namely trade and investment, often of the people through migration. We shall learn more about globalization in Unit 3. Domestic versus international business. The basic principles of business concerning tasks, functions, and processes that apply to international business are the same as that of domestic business. However, the environment in which domestic and international firms operate varies considerably and therefore requires an international firm to modify and adapt its business practices country by country. Unlike a domestic business manager, an international manager faces greater difficulties, greater uncertainties, and more importantly, much greater risks. The tasks of an international business executive are clearly much more challenging. These difficulties, uncertainties, and risks originate from differences in the political, economic, legal, and cultural environment, and from differences in foreign exchange markets and exchange rate systems. In most cases, these problems manifest themselves as constraints which render the process of decision making and its implementation in international business more difficult than in domestic business. More importantly, culturally insensitive decisions often result in conflicts which are more difficult to resolve without seriously affecting the performance of the firm, its future operations, and the effectiveness of its management. The dynamic nature of constant changes in business, economic, political, and legal environments in the host country adds still more difficulties with which the international business executives must deal on an almost daily basis. The differentiation between domestic and international business can broadly be done on the following parameters. Culture. Each country in which the firm operates is culturally different. To be successful, the firm must operate in a culturally sensitive manner and within the constraints of the culturally determined manners, customs, values, and norms of the host country. An international business manager must respect and empathize with cultural differences in all aspects of business and social life, seek to confirm and cooperate rather than confront or behave as if operating in his or her own culture. Nike, the global sports shoe manufacturer, realized this fact in a hard way when it produced and marketed Nike Air brand of shoes for the first time. It wrote Air in cursive fonts and in an artistic way, but it created a great problem in Saudi Arabia because it looked like the word Allah in Persian. Similarly, marketing campaigns, especially the advertising, may have to be adapted according to the local culture. Many years ago, campaign for tough shoes, which had shown male and female models wearing only shoes and no clothes, had come under scanner. It was considered as obscene and was subsequently banned in India. However, a similar campaign in some other country like France may not have evoked public outcry and might have been considered normal like any other campaign. Fiscal and government policies. Conducting business across national borders involves the use of different currencies and observing different government rules and regulations, limiting the firm's freedom of action. For example, restrictions on the amount of profit to be transferred. Different government practice different exchange rate policies and systems, ranging from daily decrees about the value of the local currency in terms of the world's major currencies to fixed and floating exchange rate system. These practices add greater risk and uncertainty to the already high risky and uncertain nature of international financial transactions. To be successful, the firm must develop an appropriate strategy to deal with these differences and the associated problems. Legal environment. The legal environment differs from country to country, requiring firms to show particular sensitivity to laws, rules, and regulations which may affect operations and performance. Disregarding or disobeying the laws of the host country can be very damaging to the finances and the image of the firm. Laws pertaining to joint ownership of assets, for example, are often very complicated, bureaucratic, frustrating, and time-consuming. Legal difficulties are often the source of serious disputes between the host government and the firm, requiring protracted negotiations which may end in failure to invest or to continue the existing business. Consumer tastes and preferences. Differences in consumer tastes and preferences and demand patterns arising from cultural differences require the firm to adopt appropriate production, procurement, and marketing strategies to minimize costs and maintain the firm's value. McDonald's, for example, does not offer beef and pork items in India and sells only vegetarian food dishes in predominantly vegetarian state of Gujarat. Even in the case of standard global products, certain modifications may be necessary to render the product more acceptable to the consumer in the host culture. For example, the name of the product in the host country's language may be offensive or the packaging may be inappropriate. Availability of factors of production. Different countries possess different factor endowments with different qualities, requiring the firm to formulate and implement suitable product development and logistics strategies consistent with the availability and quality of resources in the host country. Certain skills or supplies may be either unavailable or available in limited quantities and qualities. If unavailable, the firm must either import them or develop local sources of supply. Following its entry into the Soviet market in 1990, McDonald's, one of the first Western fast food firms, experienced serious difficulties in obtaining high-quality local food supplies consistent with its food technology. To meet its high standards in quality, delivery, and production methods, McDonald's had to transfer agricultural technology, equipment, and consultants from other countries with superior technology to work with Soviet farmers. One astonishing outcome was an increase of 100% in potato output alone. It even set up its own dairy farms, cattle farms, food processing plants, and distribution system. Thus, international business should not be seen just as an extension of domestic business. It is quite different from the domestic business. Importance of international business. In recent years, international business has acquired additional importance for host countries in particular and world economies in general as a result of developments in the following areas. Technology diffusion. Technological developments are transmitted to every corner of the earth through the practice of international business. This transmission is not only in the form of products and services used every day, but also in the form of modern management, production, marketing, and logistics systems employed by domestic as well as international firms. And thanks to the dramatic developments in communication and information technology, the benefits of such transmissions are shared worldwide. Stimulation to competition. Except in the case of entry through acquisition, the arrival of an international firm in the host country, either in partnership with a local firm or on its own, may stimulate domestic competition and lead to increased entrepreneurial challenges, especially in the developing countries. International firms with superior worldwide experience, knowledge, technology, and other relevant resources have the ability to offer goods and services often at lower prices and higher quality. Higher standard of living. Availability of a wide range of goods of international quality at a competitive price has brought many so-called luxury products within the reach of common man, especially in developing countries. Thanks to international business, the standard of living in many developing countries has increased significantly. Impetus for standardization. Standardization refers to the adoption of norms and practices generally acceptable in world markets. In some cases, one standard product may be sold throughout the world using similar selling techniques. Common standards enable easier and more effective comparisons to be made by consumers and other interested parties, example, health and safety authorities. The product standardization has become an easier option due to diminishing differences in consumer tastes, preferences, and interests. This is due to advances in technology, telecommunication, transport, and advertising. Adapting to international environment. A business firm operates within its internal and external environment. The internal environment is one over which the firm has considerable control. The firm determines its own internal environmental factors by specifying its corporate mission, organizational structure, recruitment policy, and its relationship with suppliers, etc. The external environment is one over which the firm has little or no control. Whatever little control the firm may have is usually the consequence of its market power or collective action by a representative body such as the Confederation of Indian Industries in India. The firm must therefore conform to its external environmental factors, whether they may be national, international, or global, or suffer the consequences of its failure to do so. For example, changes in health and safety regulations, trade policies, and the legal environment are unavoidable. Nike, one of the world's biggest manufacturers of sports and leisure wear, was forced into cancelling its licensing agreement with one of its Asian licensees suspected of employing child labor. With the increasing internationalization of business activities, the methods of dealing with international and external environmental factors tend to become more standardized. The main reason for this development is that domestic firms aspiring to expand internationally often emulate existing international firms in adapting to environmental changes. In other words, international business acts as an instrument for domestic firms to adopt more effective business policies and techniques as a preparation for going international. For example, many US and European firms have adopted Japanese management techniques such as quality circles, the just-in-time system, and total quality management in order to remain competitive in their own domestic markets in general and in international market in particular. Encouragement to global business and economic reforms. Governments play an important role in the development and promotion of international business activities. They provide a great variety of financial and non-financial incentives to attract FDI into their countries, often in competition with their neighbors. The increasing scale of liberalization of trade and investment, deregulation of domestic industries, and privatization of state-owned enterprises has the attraction of foreign business as one of its primary objectives. These measures have created immense international business opportunities. The major impact of international business in this context has been the encouragement to governments to open up their borders to international trade and investment, standardize their systems and procedures, adopt internationally acceptable values and attitudes, particularly with respect to human rights and child labor, and encourage the development of democratic institutions, economic cooperation, and integration. One of the most fundamental impacts of the process of internationalization since the end of World War II has been the progressive ending of the isolation of national economies. Gradually, more and more barriers to international trade and investment are being replaced with measures designed to enhance cooperation and coordination among nation states. The need to cooperate and coordinate over wider geographical areas has led to the formation of regional groupings in the form of free trade areas, resulting in rapid increase in the growth of international business activities. Benefits of international business. Foreign trade gives rise to several advantages, some of which are as follows. 1. Mutual exchange. As seen earlier, the countries in foreign trade stand to gain by exchange of goods and services. 2. Higher standard of living. Because of mutual exchange of products, the citizens of trading countries can enjoy the goods and services which are not available or cannot be produced in their own country. For example, in the absence of international trade, the people staying in Arabian Gulf would have lived a miserable life for want of many essential items like foodstuff, clothing, etc. But thanks to the international trade, they can sell oil and in return buy whatever they need. This has helped them to improve their standard of living. 3. Stabilization of prices. Prices, it is said, are a function of demand and supply. Naturally, during the time of natural calamities like flood, famine, etc., the supply of food grain will be affected. Thus, when a country cannot grow sufficient amount of food grain required for its domestic consumption, they have to be imported to maintain adequate supply and prices. The same principle holds good when there is a surplus of production. The excess production may be exported to maintain prices in the domestic market. 4. Specialization. As seen earlier, a country tends to export such products in which it has comparative or absolute advantage, for example, India in rice or Gulf countries in oil. When a country keeps on exporting the same product over a number of years, it leads to specialization. 5. Increased productivity. Because of the geographical specialization and expertise attained, the country can produce more goods and better quality of goods and services, which in turn leads to higher productivity. The excess capacity, if any, of industrial products can be utilized fully. This will lead to economies of large-scale production. The shining example is of Japanese car manufacturers. 6. Wider markets. Many firms are attracted towards the international market for the growing opportunities for their products in other countries. This may be because of the saturation in the domestic market or because the foreign market may be more profitable. 7. Economic development. Due to foreign trade, developing countries like India can earn valuable foreign exchange through exports. The income of the government in the form of customs duty can also increase. Countries like Japan, UK, and USA have achieved economic growth through imports of raw materials and export of manufactured goods. 8. Promotion of international peace. When countries trade with each other and depend upon each other for their requirements, the tension amongst them gets reduced and a bond of friendship may develop. This helps in developing the cultural and social relations along with the business relations. Challenges in international business. As seen earlier, international trade differs from domestic trade in a number of aspects. As compared to domestic market, foreign trade faces some peculiar or unique difficulties which are as follows. 1. Distance and high cost of transport. International trade is normally carried over a long distance between the place of manufacture and place of consumption. The transport cost may be huge and hence distance plays a major role in decision making. 2. Time lag. Due to the mentioned factor, it takes much more time to execute an order. It may take several months to realize the money after the receipt of an order and dispatch of goods. Further, longer the time lag, more is the risk of the cargo being damaged in transit, especially if it is perishable. 3. Language, customs, and laws. Every country has different social, cultural, and legal practices. These differences can create a hindrance in the smooth flow of international trade. Further, the difference in languages can also act as a barrier. For example, while trading with Arabian countries, the knowledge of Arabic would be of great advantage. Many a times, these differences in language lead to misunderstanding. 4. Currency and measurement. Every country has its own currency, which is subject to fluctuations in exchange rates. This fluctuation must be properly understood in terms of the currency in the domestic market. Further, the system of weights and measurements followed in foreign market may be quite different than the one in the domestic market. For instance, the system followed in India is metric system, but USA does not follow the same. One must understand how to convert one into the other. 5. Government control, regulation, and taxes. Every government sets its own rules and regulations for import of goods and services. These rules may differ from commodity to commodity and from country to country. Depending upon the country of origin, there may be different set of rules. For example, when European Union countries trade with each other, they charge negligible or no import duty. But when these countries trade with outsiders, they charge heavy duties. 6. Risk and uncertainty. Because of all these difficulties mentioned above, export-import trade is full of risk and uncertainty and hence needs specialized knowledge.
You were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code Mmpc 016 International Business Management. Course Coordinator Professor G. Subayama. Voiceover by Renuka. Edited by Ashok Sharma. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan and Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.